Okay, thanks for joining us. You're watching LockerBlogger.com. This is the 60. I'm Roman Lillie. Today we're joined by Vin Parise of WFAN Radio. You can also check him out on his website, vphoops.com. Vin, thank you for joining us today. So let's talk about the NCAA Tournament. Now, of course, every year, no matter what goes on, when it's March Madness, there's always some kind of controversy. You know, how do you feel about the teams that were chosen? Do you feel like there were any big omissions this year?
I'll tell you what, Roman, you know, when you look at the field as a whole, you know, last year I think I was more upset about some of the bubble teams that didn't make it. But when I look at the top bubble teams this year, your Mississippi States, your Illinois, your Virginia Tech, I really don't have a with them being on the outside looking in. I think VTech was the best out of the bunch that did not make the NCAA field. But when I look at Seth Greenberg's team as a whole, I just think that his non-conference scheduling killed him. I don't think he played enough tough teams outside of ACC play. So I have no problem with those three teams coming in. You know, there's a couple surprises in terms of the teams that did sneak in. I think if you're going to put a Florida in, maybe make them an 11 seed or a 12. It was surprising that they got a 10. I was surprised Northern Iowa got as high a seed as they did. Notre Dame was a little bit of a surprise to be that high. Mike Breen thought that they were going to be more of an 8 or a 9 seed. So just some minor surprises there. But one team, Roman, doesn't really just jump out at me as, wow, they really should have been in the field of 65.
Now let's talk about some of the matchups going in. Are there any that you're particularly looking forward to seeing, teams that you think might have a rough go of it, and possibly any upsets that you think might happen this season?
Well, I'll tell you what, as you know, Roman, the most talked about upset in the first round is that 5-12 game. But when you look at this field, there's some interesting seedings there in the first round to play when we see Thursday and Friday's games. But the only 5-12 game that jumps out at me that can be a potential upset is UTEP over Butler in the West Division. I think the other 5-12 games are going to follow suit. Michigan State is going to have no problem with New Mexico State in that 5-12 game in the Midwest because New Mexico State's lucky to be in the tournament. They had to have a miracle upset versus Utah State, and they were the 3 seed in their own conference tournament. Temple plays as good a half-court defense as I've seen down at the Atlantic 10 tournament. They were holding teams to under 30% from the field. So as great a year as Cornell had, they are not going to upset Temple. And Texas A&M is a better basketball team than Utah State. But when you look at that 5-12 matchup of Butler over UTEP, I really like UTEP in that first round for an upset. Butler has tremendous offensive players, and they really score the basketball. But UTEP is extremely tough. They are extremely strong. Tony Barbee has a very powerful front line, and I think they're up there for Butler. And, I think that's one you got to keep your eye on, especially in the first round.
Well, we'll definitely keep our eye on it. I must say, me personally, I love it when there's a good upset. I'm always kind of rooting for the underdog. But what role do you think injuries are going to play, in the season? When you think about players like Robbie Hummel with Purdue, do you think these teams that are missing some of their key players are going to be able to pull through this?
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. The next game that I was going to get to is that Siena game. And I think if you're Fran McCaffrey, who's won a game in the first round of the tournament the last 2 years, and last season was within a couple of minutes there versus Louisville as to going to the Sweet 16, that I like Siena over Purdue in the first round. I mean, without Robbie Hummel, this team really, really struggles to score. They scored 11 points in the first half of a Big Ten tournament game versus Minnesota and Tubby Smith. They really struggle on offense without him, and Siena has that veteran experience. I'd be surprised if Siena didn't upset Purdue in the first round. But now when you look at Syracuse's injury, it's not as impactful as Robbie Hummel for Purdue. I think that's why they hurt Syracuse a little bit by sending them out west to Salt Lake and making them the 4th number 1. I disagree strongly with that. I think Syracuse is better than Duke. When you look at the entire season, Syracuse is the best team in the best conference in the country. But Arenzi Onuaku is going to miss the first 2 games of this tournament, so that may affect them a little bit. But when you really look at who they're playing, I think Syracuse in the Sweet 16 is a safe bet.
So now, who are you expecting to go all the way? I mean, who are you seeing in the Final Four?
Well, for the Final Four, out of the Midwest, I have Kansas. Out of the West Division, I have Syracuse making it, so no surprises there. My surprise is going to be in the East. I love John Calipari and I love Kentucky, but I got Bob Huggins and that West Virginia team that we saw during this Big East tournament in New York coming out of the East region. As terrific as John Wall is and as great a coach as Calipari is during tournament time, I just don't know if Kentucky could win 6 straight and go all the way to the Monday night in Indianapolis with that much youth. When you rely on freshmen that much, I think that, and granted, they've shown that they can play, and they're one of the best teams in the country. But I just think that West Virginia's experience, I like them upsetting Kentucky there out of the East. And then in the South, I think this is one of the better. I usually pick teams to upset Duke, but this is a very, very strong Duke team. So I got them making it out of the South, too. So only one surprise out of the 4 regions for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those freshmen fare with all the pressure that certainly comes along with these tournaments. So, time will tell. I want to just thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, everyone, you can check out Vin's blog, vphoops.com. Vin, thank you for being here today, for joining us. And this has been the 60.
Thanks so much for having me on, Roman. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We want to have you back, of course, as things are progressing, get some updates and see if there are, in fact, any people that surprise you a little bit. So,
definitely. I think the second and third rounds are going to be the best ones of this tournament. Better than the Final Four, better than the first round. These Sweet 16 matchups are going to be big time.
Absolutely. Well, you're watching the 60 on LockerBlogger. Thank you.